Have you ever wondered how we really know that one thing causes another? I mean, for sure. In psychology, we can't just go with a gut feeling. We need to prove it. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the most powerful tool we have for doing just that, the experiment. Look, we all have these hunches, right? You feel like you're more focused after a coffee, or you're sure that listening to one specific playlist helps you study. But, feelings aren't proof. So let's take a real question. Does playing video games improve reaction time? How would you actually, scientifically, prove that? Where would you even start? Right. You can't just rely on a hunch. To really get to the truth of the matter, you need a system, a controlled way to test your idea. And in the world of psychology, that tool is the experiment. It's how we separate what we think is true from what we can actually show is true. Okay, so every great experiment, no matter how complex it seems, really starts with the same two fundamental parts. These are the absolute core concepts you've got to know: the independent variable and the dependent variable. Let's break them down. First up is the independent variable, or what we usually just call the IV. This is the one thing the researcher is intentionally changing or controlling. Think of it as the cause in a cause and effect relationship. It's the knob that the experimenter is turning to see what happens. So what can an IV be? Well, pretty much anything a researcher can control. As you can see here, it could be something in the environment, like how bright the lights are or how noisy your room is. It could be the type of task you give someone, or even an internal state, like making one group feel anxious and another feel happy. The key is the experimenter is in charge of it. And, well, if the independent variable is the cause, then the dependent variable, or DV, is the effect. This is the thing you measure. It's the outcome you're watching to see if it depends on the changes you made with your IV. That's why it's called dependent. Its value depends on what you did. All right, enough theory. Let's put this into practice. Let's imagine a scenario. Some researchers want to know if background noise messes with students' performance on a math test. So they set up a few different classrooms, each with a different soundscape. So take a look. Based on what we just talked about, can you figure out the independent variable, the thing the researchers are changing, and what about its different levels or conditions? And finally, what's the dependent variable, the outcome they're going to measure? I'll give you a second to think it over. Okay, let's see how you did. The independent variable is the type of background noise. That's what's being manipulated, right? The levels of that IV are the specific conditions they created: calming music, aggressive music, and total silence. And the dependent variable, well, that's the math task performance, the scores on the test. See how it all just kind of clicks into place? Now, it's one thing to have a big idea like anxiety or intelligence, but it's a completely different challenge to actually measure it in a lab. This brings us to a really crucial step. We have to define our terms in a way we can actually work with. This is such an important distinction. On one side, you have the conceptual definition. That's just the what. It's the dictionary definition of an idea. But science needs the how. That's where the operational definition comes in. It's not a definition, it's a recipe. It gives you the exact, concrete steps for how to measure or manipulate your variable. I mean, for example, here's a conceptual definition of anxiety. It's a great description, right? We all know what it means. But how on earth do you create apprehensive anticipation in a lab? You can't put a measuring tape on it. It's just too vague. Now check this out. This is how a researcher named Schachter solved this problem back in a famous 1959 study. To operationalize anxiety, he created two very real, distinct conditions. He told the high anxiety group they were about to get some painful electric shocks. Then he told the low anxiety group that the shocks would just feel like a little tickle. And boom, just like that, the abstract concept of anxiety became a concrete, real, manipulable, independent variable. Now that is a strong operational definition. So we've got our variables, and we've got our recipe for how to measure them. But how do we know our measurements are actually any good? This is where two more absolutely critical ideas come into play: reliability and validity. The best way to think about this is with a bathroom scale. Reliability is all about consistency. If you step on the scale 3 times in a row and get the same number each time, that scale is reliable. Now, validity is about accuracy. Does that scale show your actual weight? A scale can be reliable, but not valid. Imagine it's always 5 pounds off. It gives you the same wrong number every time. But it can never be valid if it's not reliable first. And reliability isn't just one simple thing. For instance, inter-rater reliability is super important when you have people scoring something subjective, like an essay. You want to know that two different graders would give it about the same score. Or test-retest reliability asks if a personality quiz would give you the same results on Monday as it would on Friday. They're all just ways to build confidence that your measurements are consistent. All right, even with the best variables and the best measures, things can still go sideways. A good researcher has to be like a detective, always on the lookout for these hidden factors that could completely ruin their experiment.
And the thing they're protecting is what we call internal validity. This is the absolute goal of any experiment. It's the confidence that you have that your IV, and only your IV, is what caused the change you saw in your DV. When you have high internal validity, you've nailed down cause and effect. It's the holy grail of research.
The biggest threats to internal validity are other variables. An extraneous variable is any random thing that could have an effect, like the temperature of the room or a participant's mood. But the real danger, the experiment killer, is a confounding variable. This is a factor that changes right along with your IV, which means it gives you a totally different explanation for your results, and your whole experiment is basically ruined.
And this is a fantastic way to remember the difference. Just burn this into your memory. All confounders are extraneous variables, but not all extraneous variables are confounders. A confound is that special, systematic, sneaky type of extraneous variable that completely messes with your results. It's the one you have to watch out for. And here are some of the classic culprits that researchers have to guard against. A history threat, for example, could be some huge news event that happens in the middle of your study that changes everyone's mood. Maturation is much simpler. It could just be that people get tired or bored during a long experiment. A huge part of good experimental design is just anticipating and neutralizing these kinds of problems before they start.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground, from the absolute basics to the hidden threats you gotta avoid. So let's wrap all this up and boil it down to the essentials. So here it is, your new checklist for thinking like an experimental psychologist. 1. Identify a clear IV to manipulate. 2. Choose a precise DV to measure. 3. Create strong, concrete operational definitions. 4. Make sure your measures are both reliable and valid. And 5, and this is a big one, control for those sneaky confounding variables to protect your internal validity. This is the recipe for an experiment that can actually tell you something real about cause and effect.
So there you have it. That's the basic toolkit. You now understand the fundamental logic behind how we uncover the secrets of the human mind. So the only question left is, with these new tools in your belt, what mystery would you want to solve? Now go on and keep exploring.